A jugaad or a hack that you have used at work that actually worked?
Yeah, this is very contrarian. We ended up cutting the menu by half and increasing the sales by 30%.
I believe AI is changing our world, right? So, and I believe, so we talked about apps in the earlier part of the conversations. Apps actually might become redundant.
People know the values that we are talking about. I think they're intuitively they make sense and they're the right way to live or the right way to sort of go about your work on a day-to-day basis.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of JFL Unplugged, where we take you behind the scenes into authentic conversations and stories of people who make Jubilant Foodworks what it is today. Through this series, we try to bring alive how we live our JFL values every single day through real life experiences, and we surely will have a lot of laughs along the way. I am Tushar Saraswat, your host for today, and joining me today are two incredible leaders who have played a very critical role in shaping how we live, how we grow, how we innovate, and how we connect with our millions of customers every single day. One of them brings the flavor and the firepower of the brand, while the other one very critically designs seamless digital experiences that make ordering your JFL products a breeze. So, welcome Tejaswi, who is our business head for Hong's Kitchen and Dunkin', and our Chief Product Officer, Mr. Vaneet Singla. So glad to have you here with us today.
Let me start off. I am here under duress. So, but glad to be here. Though.
And duly noted.
And thank you for hosting us. Thank you for having us here.
Perfect. Let's start with something fun, right? In fact, my first question is to both of you. You both have had very different journeys in product and business leaderships, right? If you had to describe your career journey so far with one menu item at JFL, what would it be and why? Let's start with you, Tejaswi.
Interesting question. I'll probably have to say the chili paneer wrap that we used to have. We used to call it a Hong Kong wrap. One, you don't associate the wrap with the Chinese cuisine. It's one of those very unassuming products. But once you bite into it, there's a little bit of crispiness. There's the pack of like the Chinese flavors coming through. So I would probably associate my entire journey with that. Very unassuming, but at the same time, full of surprises.
Wonderful, wonderful. What about you, Vaneet?
No, so mine actually would be more like an extravaganza, right? So I think I started my career off as a margherita. Probably I've ended up as an extravaganza. So the base has stayed same. So the base is about solving problems, right? So, and then each topping, like the way I look at it, like every single sector that I've worked for, and I worked for maybe like 7 or 8 sectors over the last 20 years, is essentially a topping. So the closest thing that comes to mind is an extravaganza.
Amazing, amazing. Very interesting analogies. And in fact, the next question is for you, Tejaswi, right? Another fun challenge for you. You look at our 5 values, right? If you are sitting at a dinner table, how will you explain the 5 JFL values to your kids in a most interesting and funny way?
I think kids nowadays, it's kind of very difficult to wean them off smartphones. So probably I'll have to use examples from a smartphone. And just to give you a sense, like if I look at, let's say, being customer first, the sea changes that have happened over smartphones in terms of how everything has evolved to suit multiple use cases. Like for example, this cameras that work in the night mode, the stability that you get, the amount of processing power that you get to play games. So all of this has been done from a customer first thinking. If you look at drive growth, there are a lot of innovations that have happened in terms of the screen sizes, the responsiveness of the screens and how things are happening, and even in the number of cameras or the resolution of the cameras. I think one particular way to look at drive growth would be probably from there. Then you look at hustle mindfully. Every year, almost every single brand, they know exactly when they're going to launch a new model. And they are doing multiple upgrades. They're changing the processor, they're changing the resolutions, they're changing the chip designs, the screens, the batteries. So many things keep going, but they all know that they have to get it ready on that particular launch date and get it ready across the world. So hustle mindfully is at the core there. If you look at lead with care is a more internal metric. But if I have to venture a guess in terms of how it is reflecting, you look at the number of language choices that you get nowadays. Like every single country, you get a Mandarin keyboard, you get a Hindi keyboard, you get a Spanish keyboard, and you have audio recognition as well. So that's a fantastic example in terms of how they're leading with care and making sure that everybody is able to use it. And finally, if I have to talk about finding better ways, I don't know if people remember this. The first smartphones used to be all Blackberries, where you had the plasticky keyboards. And if you look at how that has changed, you only got a certain size in terms of the screen size. You always had to contend with that keyboard. Nowadays, the keyboard comes and goes off basis your requirement. The screen can be used both in portrait and in oriented and in landscape mode as well. And it works. So I mean, it's a very simple solve where there's an inbuilt keyboard that comes at your backend call. At the same time, doesn't take away from the experience of the smartphone. So I thought that was a fantastic innovation there.
Amazing, amazing. I never thought about values. I never looked at the values from a smartphone lens. So very interesting and fun start. But yeah, now let's move deeper into how these values actually shape up in our day-to-day life, right? And to that, my first question is to you, Vaneet. Mobile applications are your first touch points to the customers, right? Can you share a customer story or a customer feedback that directly impacted how you look at a feature or how you improve a feature with your teams?
Sure. So, and this is a story from about 4 years back. And at that point of time, like, of course, like mobile apps were important channels of business. Like, so they were doing about 30%. But the onboarding was like 12 step long. So the way this onboarding was designed, so a customer will download the app. So we'll ask them for their language preference. We'll ask them for their address. We'll ask them for their name. We'll ask them for their age. And if you think like, so in hindsight, like all of those are important parameters and important pieces of information. But think about it from a customer perspective. So they're hungry. So they've probably looked at our advertisement on Facebook or elsewhere. And they've already gone through the friction of downloading the app. And at that point of time, you're asking them for their age, you're asking them for their address, you're asking them whether they want Hindi, English, Telugu, or some other language. So what we did was compress those 12 steps into one single step, right? So where on Android, you just have to tap onto your phone number and you're done. Like, so we directly take you to what you downloaded that app for, which is get them to delight faster. So yeah, so that's the first story that comes to mind I would say, being customer backward.
Wow, wow. Great, thank you. Thank you so much for those insights, Vaneet. And you talked about the importance of being customer first, right? Tejaswi, which brings me to the next question about leading with care, right? Being customer first is important, but how important is leading with care, especially in a QSR ecosystem where you are leading large, diverse frontline teams? Could you share a personal example where you took a small amount of care, right, helped inspire your teams or turn around a tough situation?
Yeah, sure. QSR business is a very tough business. You live and die every day. Every single transaction is important. And I remember back in 2023, just when we had made the necessary corrections in terms of the food on Hong's Kitchen, we still felt like our service levels were not at that level. And then, like me and my team, we decided that we are going to get the entire frontline staff in one single location. And going into that meeting, and we had booked a cinema hall. We had gotten almost 250 plus of our entire frontline staff there. We took a shutdown for a full day on that day. And then going into that meeting, I think we were like really nervous. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know how the teams will sort of react. But the moment we stepped in, and we got this vibe, like a serious, positive, energetic vibe from the frontline team. And then later on, when we opened it up for the QA, there were so many suggestions in terms of how we can improve our menu, how we can improve the design of the stores, how we can do better for our customers. They gave me a lot of anecdotes in terms of what we are missing in terms of some of our product choices. It was a fantastic experience. And to this day, every time I think about this incident, it gives me goosebumps. And it helped us. Our service levels improved after that. We won the best service award within the retail industry. We got numerous accolades from the industry partners. We had few examples during the monsoon season at that point in time where our delivery riders who were sort of wading through waterlogged back roads in Delhi NCR and in Gurgaon. Anybody who has been in Gurgaon, they know how Gurgaon transforms completely into Venice the moment it starts raining. And we had all of those examples, and it was just amazing that we were able to get that service delivery right and get the brand to a certain level in terms of our top line targets.
Great, amazing. I'm sure I would also love to be part of a meeting that happens inside a cinema hall. But it's really inspiring to see how leading with care actually translated into driving growth, right? Which actually brings me to my next question to you, Vaneet, right? Especially for digital teams, when we talk about driving growth as a value, how does this translate into day-to-day actions for anyone who's part of digital or product teams at JFL?
See, one thing I've been trying to inculcate a lot in my teams is the why culture. So we take a lot of bets, but it is like my request and my guidance to my teams is that always articulate the why. Before you take a bet, articulate the why. And once you have articulated the why, go all in and measure. So that's step number 2. So articulate the why, measure, and then iterate. So if you combine these 3 together, so why are we taking a bet? What's the result of that bet? And are there any changes we need to make? And then making those changes quickly. So ultimately leads to driving growth. So it's a fairly simple framework, but it has worked out very well for us.
I'm sure it's fairly simple, but the why element of it is extremely critical, and I'm sure it also connects to our next value, Tejaswi, right? Hustling mindfully. In QSR, hustling is a part of life, right? QSR is quick service, so hustling is definitely a part of life. But how do you stay mindful in the middle of all this hustle every single day?
Just before we jump into that, I mean, what Vaneet has been trying to do, we have been at the receiving end of that why culture. A lot of people keep coming and asking, say, why are we doing it? Why do we need to do it? And all of those. So yeah, the culture is there. It's working already. Coming back to like hustling mindfully. See, on the face of it, it kind of feels like an oxymoron, like you're trying to hustle at the same time as also think about it. But it does happen. And a few tactics that I've seen the restaurant teams sort of engage in. So you'll have the frontline team, the majority of the frontline team sort of hustling to make sure that all the orders are going through. But if you watch the restaurant manager or the manager on duty, they'll always keep an eye on where there are stress levels or where things are about to break. And that's the mindfulness angle that they're able to bring in. I mean, it's a little bit of a difficult challenge, but the idea is to always keep observing or removing yourself from the hustle at the same time when it is happening, so that you can make sure that you have the corrective action in mind and that you can improve later on. And the other part is, there's always this tendency to sort of fix it in the short term. You should always be wary of taking a lot of band-aid solutions and then sort of leaving it for too late later, because it is for sure going to break down. So you need to be very mindful of which choices you're making, which are very short-term oriented, and make sure that you're revisiting them and fixing it for eternity, or fixing it for the medium term or the long term, for example.
Wow, wonderful. Really, really inspiring. Yeah, sorry, you were adding something, Vaneet?
No, I agree. So I think hustle mindfully. As a DNA, we focus a lot on hustle, not enough on the mindfully side. And whenever you are faced with a problem, of course you have to take a corrective action. So business can't wait. So Tejaswi said that QSR is our live or die today business, right? So we have to take an action immediately, which is the corrective part of the problem. But there has to be a preventive part. So you have to take a corrective action, and then you have to take a preventive action. So you have to solve and fix that problem structurally.
Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful. Which actually brings me to the next question as well, Vaneet, right? Which is around finding better ways when you talk about fixing the issue for the long term, right? Finding better ways is at the heart of your role, and for anyone who's part of your team, right? So and we always talk about success stories, but has there ever been any one experiment that has not gone as planned but taught you and your teams about the benefit of finding better ways and having that mindset every single day?
By the way, almost 30% of the things that we do fail. And we're actually best in the industry in that terms of that number, right? So as we grow, I expect that number to go from 30 to 50, right? But coming back to your question, right? I think most people won't know that the food first app that we keep on talking about failed on the first launch. So today, it's like hindsight is 2020. Food first is the right thing to do. But when we launched it for the very first time on Domino's, so the numbers actually crashed, right? So, and then it of course was a surprise to us because the overall UX was much better. It was people were telling us like left, right, and center that they'll open up the app and they'll start feeling hunger because the app was so much focused on good-looking, hunger-evoking images, but the numbers were just not happening, right? And again, so kudos to the team. So what we started doing was we started double-clicking and triple-clicking, and it took us about 10 different changes before we came to the break-even, right? And then, of course, so from there on, it became that foundation on top of which we have been able to deliver 1,000 bips of conversion improvement that we have been able to deliver.
Wow, amazing to see, Vaneet, that how values will also guide you and act as an anchor even when things are not going as planned, right? Amazing. Great. So time to heat things up, shift gears. We move into our next section, which is the rapid fire. Rules are simple. Answer quick, no thinking. Just go with your gut and answer, right? So I'll start with you, Tejaswi, first. Be customer first. What is the quirkiest customer feedback you have ever received?
Yeah, we received a lot of quirky feedbacks. Like one was we had kumpa on our menu, and I remember this customer basically complaining to us saying कि मुझे पाव नहीं मिला. And then there were a couple of feedbacks, negative feedbacks that we got, and then we looked at it and they were not negative essentially. They were like, one was a love letter to one of the staffs of the restaurant. The second one was an appeal to open a franchise outlet. So we get a lot of this kind of feedbacks. It's all fun in day to day.
Amazing. Next one, over to you, Vaneet.
I want to add one more.
Please.
Dal makhni pizza.
Dal makhni pizza. That was a customer recommendation.
Oh, nice.
I'm sure it would be a hit, at least in North India.
I don't know. But yeah,
We'll still see.
back to you.
Yeah, over to you, Vaneet. One small gesture of care you live by as a leader.
I want to live by that gesture, but I'm not always able to. I want to speak last. So I want to speak last with my team. So, and my realization has been that whenever I speak first, I end up coloring the room. So I don't want to color the room. So that's one principle that I'm trying very hard to live by.
How powerful. How powerful. Yeah, next one to you, Tejaswi. A jugaad or a hack that you have used at work that actually worked.
Yeah, this is very contrarian. We ended up cutting the menu by half and increasing the sales by 30%. So, I would recommend this for everybody.
Amazing. Vaneet, one bold idea you would bet on to drive growth in the next 2 years.
I believe AI is changing our world, right? So, and I believe, so we talked about apps in the earlier part of the conversations. Apps actually might become redundant. And so it will obviously need a behavior catalyst. It needs a catalyst where people shift away from using apps to place the orders and move over to chatbots or even other ways of using AI to place orders. But it's a matter of time. So whether that time is 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, I don't know. Nobody knows. But I believe that the next growth vector is going to come from the company that adopts the AI fastest, especially in the food industry.
Wow. Wow. Tejaswi, what is your go-to ritual to recharge after a long day?
I follow a lot of sports. I go back to seeing highlights, looking at the scorecard. Because one thing I keep telling my team is that, especially the frontline teams are very close to high-performing athletes. Because all high-performing athletes, they live and die on that day, on that match. That's it. It's the same for all frontline staffs. Like they can equate themselves to a Dhoni or a Virat Kohli. And that's the reason why I think I'm hooked onto sports, and that's the reason why I love QSR as a business.
Wow. And on a lighter note, which sports? Cricket, football?
I follow
Formula
everything. Like I follow kabaddi, I follow tennis, I follow golf. American football, cricket for sure, because we are in India, but I follow almost all sports.
I already had my answer if you would have said football and Manchester United, but we'll hold on to that conversation for
Yeah, fair
later.
enough.
Next one for you, Vaneet. If you had to rename one value with your own twist, what would it be?
I'll probably make being customer first a lot more specific. And my articulation for being customer first would be earn the trust. So every single action that you do, so you have to keep that in mind, that every single action has to contribute towards earning the customer trust today, tomorrow, and for decades to come. So that would be my, I would say, articulation on what I think is a very obvious value.
That's a very, very good one. Tejaswi, which value do you think your team would say you embody the most?
Yeah, my team keeps saying this. I was slim and fit when I joined. I have taken drive growth very personally, as you can see. So I've grown a lot.
It is the occupational hazard as well, I'm sure.
I don't see that happening to other people.
It happens to all of us, by the way.
Great. Vaneet, next one to you. Which value do you secretly wish you could improve upon?
I said this earlier. So I wish we could focus a lot more on the mindfully part of hustle mindfully, and especially for the tech teams, where you don't live day to day. So you have to think a lot more about the structural solutions. And hustle helps. Hustle definitely helps. Like regardless of the function, it helps. But hustle almost always has to be accompanied by the mindfulness part. And that's the only way you're creating something that will stand test of the time. And the reality is that whatever you do today, so compounding doesn't kick in if it gets cancelled by an action tomorrow. Compounding only kicks in if what you're doing today gets built upon tomorrow, and whatever you're doing tomorrow gets built upon day after tomorrow. So yeah, so that's what I think about one value or one twist that I'll bring in.
Amazing. Last question in this fun section. If each JFL value were a Bollywood character, what would it be? And we'll start with you, Tejaswi. Be customer first.
Shah Rukh Khan probably. He has done comedy, he has done action, he has done negative roles. He has been like the chocolate hero. He's done everything.
Addressing the customer need wherever
there was
Amazing.
one.
Vaneet, lead with care.
I would say maybe Sanjay Dutt from Munna Bhai, right? So, and there the entire philosophy was that people will figure out what they want to do. All they need is a bit of love, a pinch of love, and they'll be able to do wonders. So, yeah, so that probably is the name that comes to mind.
Amazing. Next one is for you, Tejaswi. Hustle mindfully.
I think Sridevi from English to English. I mean, in the number of things that she was trying to multitask and manage, I think that's the character that comes to mind.
Wow. Next one is for you, Vaneet. Drive growth.
I would say the example that comes to mind is Bhuvan from Lagan. So cricket is India's religion. I'm no different. I used to be a big fan of cricket when that movie came out. But what has stuck with me over all these years is how Bhuvan went about building what was a nothing team into a team that could actually beat a professional team. It took a lot of innovations, lot of incremental changes, but is a perfect example of driving growth.
Absolutely. Last one for you, Tejaswi. Find better ways.
I think Amir Khan from Dil Chahta Hai. I think he, like in that movie, if anybody can recollect, he proposes to the same girl. He uses the same language. But the only thing he does differently the second time is basically he changes the tone. The first one was more fun, and second one he's more serious, and that works for him.
Incremental change is what Vaneet was talking about
Yeah,
earlier.
it works with all customers, as you can see. So,
Great. Now, last question for this podcast, and this is for both of you, and we'll start with you, Vaneet. If you had to give all our employees one tip to live JFL values in everyday fun way, what would it be?
So I'll tell you like what I tell my teams, right? So do the grandma test. So every action that you do, think about how this is going to help if your grandma was to place a pizza order, or for that matter, the Hong's order or the coffee order, right? The after. Not truly.
Great. And what about you, Tejaswi?
I think they can by heart this podcast. There are some real gems here. But on a lighter note, I think people know the values that we are talking about. I think they're intuitively they make sense, and they're the right way to live, or the right way to sort of go about your work on a day-to-day basis. And I don't see any dissonance per se. I think they just have to just embrace in terms of like whatever is the right thing to do at that point in time, and it'll just flow naturally.
Amazing. It was such a fantastic conversation today, full of reflections. And thank you, Tejaswi. Thank you, Vaneet, for sharing those stories and experiences with us on this podcast. As we go ahead on this growth and business journey, these conversations actually remind us that these values are not really on paper. They are the everyday choices that describe and define who we are and how we lead. For all our listeners listening in, this is a wrap on the second episode of JFL Unplugged. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, keep rolling. वनीत को तो सुबह मैंने क्वेश्चंस दिए, कुछ अमेजिंग ही होने वाला है आज. मेरे कारण में नहीं.
मैं आ गया अम्मा. I have taken drive growth very personally, as you can see. So I've grown a lot.
Dal makhani pizza, that was a customer recommendation. Like, comment, subscribe.